Hey veterans, my name is Steve Doherty. I'm the Raleigh VA loan guy. Today I want to answer the question of how to get a VA mortgage if you do not have a DD-214. Do you need a DD-14 to get a mortgage loan from the VA? We'll answer that question and give you a list of all the documents you may need to ultimately get that VA loan if you don't have a DD-214. But first, again, my name is Steve Doherty. I'm the Raleigh VA loan guy. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran and a loan officer in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am licensed in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Please contact me if you need any assistance getting that DD-214 squared away or ultimately getting your certificate of eligibility. Spoiler alert, but please reach out if you have any questions. So let's say you do not have a DD-214. Maybe you served in the National Guard or in a reserve component and you never had any active duty time under Article 10. If you were never on active duty time under Article 10, you never needed to be separated from that official active duty component, so you were never awarded a DD-214. That's all a DD-214 does. It is separating you from the active duty component in the eyes of the government and basically turning you back into a non-active duty civilian or reservist, part-time member of the military. So you do not need a DD-214 in order to get a VA mortgage. What you really need to get a VA mortgage is a certificate of eligibility. Now, when you are discharged from an active duty component, like the Marine Corps, Air Force, right, they automatically create a DD-214 and they give you one copy. They also give a copy to the VA, and the VA kind of serves as a repository for that document. When the VA receives the DD-214, they also automatically generate your certificate of eligibility. So if you were on active duty, you did 4 years in the Navy, you got out, a year later you go to buy a home, the VA has already generated a certificate of eligibility for you. If you were never on active duty, you never get a DD-214, right? So how do you go about getting that certificate of eligibility? Well, the National Guard or the reserve component did not relay those documents and that information to the VA. You need to do that on your own. Okay, so what documents do you need? Well, generally speaking, you need 2, maybe 3 documents. The first is your wall certificate, right? And there's different names depending on your service component as to what this is. But it's basically, it looks just like a wall certificate, something you'd frame and put in your office. And it is an indicator of the characterization of your service, right? Did you get an honorable service characterization other than honorable or a general? Now, this isn't a discharge characterization like in the active duty because you were never discharged from active duty. The other is some kind of points statement or points summary, right? Something that shows the dates of your service and how many points you accumulated during your time in that National Guard or reserve component. Now, here's where it gets not complicated, but a little more varied. Each branch of service has their own name for this form, and there have been multiple iterations, right? So there could be different names for this document. Ultimately, it should be something that summarizes your dates of service and how many points that you have accumulated. Additionally, in the National Guard, this could break down to 2 documents. One is an NGB-23 and the other is an NGB-22. These, if you received them on your own, these should have been delivered to you in conjunction. Okay, so hopefully when you got off of Guard duty or reserve duty, you were given these documents and you kept them, right? You retained them and kept them in a safe place, right? If you don't have them, how do you get them? Well, you could talk to your S1 or the admin section at your old reserve or Guard unit. Hopefully they still have that document. They can forward it to you, and then you can go to the VA to have your certificate of eligibility generated. In my experience, those units usually only hold those documents for a period of about 5 years. So if your time in the National Guard or the reserve ended longer than 5 years ago, they may not still have those, right? Other reserve units get folded up. They no longer exist. In such a case, there is no one there to literally preserve your documents. So in that case, let's say your unit doesn't exist or no one has those documents anymore. How do you track those down? Well, you'd have to go to the National Archives, and they have a website, and that's how you'd retrieve the necessary documents. Again, all these documents themselves, this isn't the final step. You need to gather these documents, then take them to the VA and have the VA evaluate them to determine whether you have VA eligibility and if you or VA entitlement. And if you do, they'll create that certificate of entitlement, which is really the critical document to get to work on a VA mortgage loan. And your mortgage lender should be able to do this on your behalf. If they're making you do this, that's a pretty good indicator that they do not do very many VA mortgage loans, right? They may not have access to the database to get this done. It's not that hard of a step for a loan officer. I've done this on dozens of occasions for my borrowers. But either way, you're going to gather those necessary 2 or 3 documents. Hopefully give it to your loan officer, and they will enter that data into the VA electronically. They will chronicle the timelines that you served, upload the appropriate documents, and right now, while I'm making this video in November of 2025, the turnaround time for that is actually pretty darn quick, right? Even with the government shutdown that we're experiencing. Lately, I would say we were getting those documents back within 48, maybe 72 business hours. So there's not a long period of time from once you get it in to getting it approved. Sometimes, this is especially the case for veterans who served a long time ago, the documents have changed. The documents that we have don't really match the documents that you think you need. And the first time we go to the VA responds and says, we actually need more documentation. So then we gather more information and then we go back to the VA again. Okay. So what's the moral of the story here? Why is it such a big deal? Let's say you served, you did 6, 7, 8, 10 years in the National Guard. You know you're entitled to a VA loan. Why do you want to knock this out early? Why can't you just start this after the underwriting process has begun? Well, for starters, we cannot order a VA appraisal without a certificate of eligibility. So that means once you're under contract, we have to wait in order to do a critical step in the underwriting and loan preparation process until you've got that document. And from the outset, we don't know for certain that the documents we're providing are going to get that certificate of eligibility. What if it takes 6 weeks to get a certificate of eligibility? What if we have to go to the National Archives to track down some other documents to complete the factual scenario that we're going to present to the VA to get your certificate of eligibility? Well, in North Carolina, for instance, most closing periods are 30 days long. So if after 6 weeks we haven't even ordered your appraisal, you're likely not going to close on that home. The other thing is maybe you don't ultimately have entitlement. You would definitely want to know that ahead of time before you get under contract and start spending money, right? Moral of the story is get that certificate of eligibility before you start making offers on homes, maybe even before you start looking at homes to purchase. Again, my name is Steve Doherty. I'm the Raleigh VA loan guy. If you would like some help in getting your certificate of eligibility, please contact me. Even if you're not in South Carolina, North Carolina, or Virginia, I can give you some rudder steer on how to track those documents down and get into your first home. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and be on the lookout for more videos.